I have a question for you before we get into this.
What's up?
Do you know much about Lovecraft as a person?
No, he was a fucking racist.
He was astonishingly racist.
Yeah.
He was yeah. Like even he was considered even for his time to be like almost ridiculously racist.
Oh yeah, that I know about. Like 100%.
Do you know what have you ever given a Google for his cat's name?
I kind of want to do that now.
Yeah, you might want to do that now and not while we're on the podcast.
This might be a good intro though. Unless it's
Mm,
like downright, unless it's really a thing.
yeah,
Craft cat. Oh god!
yeah, yep,
Yo!
yeah. So,
All right, general public, don't you ever Google that. Wow.
yeah.
Hi friends, welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. I'm Dean, joined today by Gabe,
Hi.
and today we're going to be talking about cosmic horror. As you can see by the wonderful thumbnail that Gabe made, this is, in all honesty, a realm that I personally don't have a lot of expertise in, despite knowing one of the biggest names associated with cosmic horror. But yeah, this is going to be something that I think Gabe is going to enjoy talking about a lot. So, what is cosmic horror? First off, I'll give a quick definition from Google. Cosmic horror has been characterized as the fear and awe we feel when confronted by phenomena beyond our comprehension, whose scope extends beyond the narrow field of human affairs and boasts of cosmic significance. For those who might not be familiar with the genre overall, you could probably attest it to a single name, and that is H.P Lovecraft, who was basically like a godfather to the genre, like the originator of it, basically.
Essentially, yeah. He's he's the sole responsible man for creating the genre. There may have been other cosmic horror writers before him, but no one has ever reached like his levels of popularity or iconicism.
Mm-hmm. So I guess with that being said, let's talk about Lovecraft first to open up the discussion. So from what I'm familiar of Lovecraft, he is, I guess, most famous for the Cthulhu mythos. So
Yeah, the Cthulhu mythos, the old ones, the elder gods, that stuff. That's the stuff that has, yeah, sort of populated most of his cult status.
mm-hmm. And while I only know a few given names, I don't really know much about it. So Gabe, do you want to run us through like a lot of it, or a good majority of it? Because again, I don't know much about it. So
Cthulhu. We've all heard of Cthulhu before. Cthulhu is most definitely his most famous and iconic creature.
mm-hmm.
And what Cthulhu is essentially is Cthulhu is an old one. He is one of the original gods of the universe. There are several old ones, except they're all dead and but still dreaming, and their dreams are sort of seeping into reality. Cthulhu is sort of sitting at the bottom of the ocean, guarding them and keeping them until they once again rise. And essentially, the whole deal in Call of Cthulhu, in the short story, is that it's essentially a story of all these people who have either seen Cthulhu or have dreamt about Cthulhu. That's the most common way to see Cthulhu in the mythos, is to dream you're seeing him.
Hmm.
And for most people, if you look at Cthulhu for even a single second, it causes you deep psychological torments. If you look at him for more than a single second, your mind will basically snap in half, and you will be you will be incoherently mad
Hmm.
from that point on. It and that's I think Cthulhu has become popular for number one, his incredible design.
Oh yeah.
Like Cthulhu looks awesome, but I think it's more importantly it very much encapsulates what cosmic horror is about. Is this unattainable, sort of unspeakable monstrosity that causes people to basically go insane by the fact that they will look at it and their brain having no ability or frame of reference for it, they'll essentially just break.
Hmm.
um there's a quote at the beginning of Call of Cthulhu that I think I had to pull up my compendium to find it. But I think it pretty much encapsulates like what cosmic horror is about. So I think it's a good one to start with. Here's the quote: "The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but some day the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age."
Wow.
Now, yeah, I Cthulhu is obviously that's not the only story Lovecraft has done. There's a wide plethora of other stories. Another
Yeah.
very famous one that is not quite as well known as Call of Cthulhu, but it is still very popular and very much like an iconic piece of his library, which is Shadow over Innsmouth. Are you familiar with this one at all?
I don't think so. I'll look at it.
Essentially, essentially, the Shadow over Innsmouth is a story about a man who he comes into this town, and the townspeople are they're very strange. They're very rude and unwelcoming. What's most notable about them is how fucking weird looking they are.
Oh, I
They all
do know
have
about this
weird,
story. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, all right. Do you want me to over the summary of it? For
Yeah.
the
Probably still run it through. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he goes to this town, and everyone is super unwelcoming to outsiders. They're super rude to him, and he's very confused about it. But what's most confusing to him is how weird everyone in the town looks. Everyone in the town has very strange, like slimy skin. Their eyes are huge, and like they basically look like fish people. They don't look like fish quite literally, but they look like what you might imagine a person is if they've been underwater for too long, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah.
And as he explores the town, he finds out that the townspeople have been long worshiping a sort of a I can't remember if it's a creature or if it's one of the old ones in the not in the story. It has been a while, I'll admit, but they worship a creature called Dagon,
Hmm.
and Dagon's children, who are literal fish people who live in the ocean. And the guy who comes into the town, he essentially discovers that for a long time the people in Innsmouth have been breeding with these sort of fish creatures,
Oh my god.
and the people of the town are now these sort of half human, half fish people.
Holy
And then
shit.
yeah, and by the end of the story, he discovers that his lineage comes from Innsmouth, and that he's eventually going to turn into a fish person as well. And he starts to like the feeling of becoming a fish person, and he starts to enjoy the idea of worshiping Dagon.
Oh my god.
It's a very fucked up story, and that's
Yeah.
another very good, I think, example of cosmic horror.
Hmm.
Because that also, sorry, you were gonna say something?
Oh no, I was just gonna add on to something later, but I'll let you finish your point.
Yeah. Because essentially that idea of cosmic horror is it is learning too much and then the negative outcome of learning too much. In Call of Cthulhu, the protagonist never sees Cthulhu in any of the dreams, in any dream or physically,
Mm-hmm.
but the protagonist, just from learning about Cthulhu, has now become a very paranoid person, and he ends the story fearful and paranoid that the cult will come to get him now that he knows too much.
Yeah.
And Shadow over Innsmouth, the moment the protagonist learns that he has Innsmouth heritage, he starts to experience these hallucinations of fish people. He starts to think that he starts to become one of them, and his mindset becomes completely different. And he believes that he will enjoy becoming one of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So what I was gonna add on to is I wanted to talk about another story, and this one is the one I'm most familiar with, and I think it's because it's the one that I really enjoyed reading, and that is The Color Out of Space.
yes, that was another one I was going to talk about. I love
Yeah.
Color Out of Space.
Yeah, I want to talk about The Color of Space because that's the one that I'm most familiar with personally. It's the one that I think, like, the whole concept of it is just striking. I love the fact of, like, it really is a good example of what cosmic horror is, and, you know, it is Lovecraft, so I think that one was wild to me. That's the one that stuck out to me, I think, the most. So if you want to run through what The Color of Space is, Gabe.
Yeah, The Color Out of Space is. I'm not gonna waste time with a whole synopsis of it but essentially the concept of Color Out of Space is there's these farmers, and a meteor crashes outside of their house, and the meteor is emitting this unidentifiable color,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a color that none of these characters have ever seen. And then the story is essentially shakes out as out of these characters being horribly affected by the color, and this color that is beyond description. It's a great example of it's a great example of cosmic horror.
Mm-hmm.
um that's actually a good tie-in to sort of what cosmic like a what cosmic horror was about for Lovecraft, and why I think he really made cosmic horror,
Mm-hmm.
which was that which sort of ties into the elephant in the room, that Lovecraft was he, he,
You
he
don't
was an
have to beat around
interesting
the bush.
fellow.
You don't have
Yeah,
to beat around the bush.
no, he was a massive racist. He was a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, basically every form of bigotry you can conjure. He
Yeah.
was one of them, and a lot of this came from the fact that Lovecraft was he. It's hard to call him like a malicious bigot, because a lot of based on what I've read about him, a lot of his bigotry came from the fact that he was just a mentally unwell man fundamentally,
Mm-hmm.
but b a very ignorant man about the way the world worked.
Yeah.
And a lot of his horror came from a lack of knowledge. He was very afraid of the things that he didn't know and understand. I think the most comically obvious example of this is Cool Air, which is another story he did, which is when you break it down, a horror story about air conditioning, because air conditioning was invented during his lifetime, and it
Mm-hmm.
scared him. So he wrote a horror story about evil air
Oh
conditioners.
my god. So you're
And
familiar with his upbringing, or you're familiar with, like, his life history then?
I am a little I've read a little bit about it. I'm not going to call myself an expert, but I have read a little bit about it, and I can say the reason that I jumped into Color Out of Space was because Color Out of Space essentially stemmed from uh, Lovecraft learning that there were colors that were not visible to the human eye,
Mm-hmm.
and that scared the ever loving shit out of him. So he wrote Color Out of Space.
Hmm.
Um,
I didn't know
but
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm a little familiar with his upbringing. Both both of his parents. He was raised in like sort of upper middle class in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and both of his parents were committed while he was very young, and they both died in the same hospital. So I can't exactly attest to what happened after that, but yeah, he had a bit of a strange upbringing, a lot of it involving mental illness, and he was himself a very mentally unwell person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a lot of what sort of made him the person he was and what made his stories the way they were was the fact that he was so unwell, and he considered himself an outsider in a world that he didn't understand. Uh, in fact, one of the first stories that he ever wrote was
Excuse
literally
me.
called The Outsider, and
Mm.
that story it
I don't think I'm familiar
is
with that one.
it's very indicative of love how Lovecraft felt about the world and how Lovecraft felt about himself, because The Outsider is essentially about um it's about a man who is trapped inside of a castle,
Mm-hmm.
and he is trying to find his way out, and he's trying to find his way out, and eventually he gets out after spending years inside of this castle. He gets his way out, and he's been isolated for so long, and he's trying to finally reconnect with people. But as he goes to people, he finds that they're all terrified of him and they're all running away from him, and he doesn't understand why. He doesn't understand why they're scared of him. And then in the room with him, he sees a horrible, disfigured creature, and then to his horror, he sees he's looking into a mirror. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
very early standard sort of gothic horror. It's less cosmic, more gothic horror, but I think that speaks to sort of an element of what kind of person Lovecraft was. I'm not going to say I sympathize with him being a racist, because I don't. That would
Mm-hmm.
be a horrible thing to say.
Yeah, fuck racists.
But what I will say is that I can understand why so many people, as I said in the pre-intro, I was talking about how a lot of Lovecraft's fans in the modern age are, people of color. He has a lot of gay fans, and these are both groups that Lovecraft would have hated.
Mm.
And I think I'm not going to pretend to be a speaker for people of color or gay or the LGBT community, because I'm barely in one of those, and I'm not even in the other at all.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think there is something that speaks to people about feelings of like being an outsider in a world they don't in not in a world that they don't understand, but a world that doesn't understand them and tries to force them to be what they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to Lovecraft's writing that speaks to that.
Yeah. Well, in that case, then we could segue into another topic that I had. So you mentioned how like Lovecraft's work is been, I guess, pretty. I don't want to say beloved, but like a lot of people do find interest in his work nowadays. And
Mm-hmm.
to open up, or like to open that up a little bit more, like let's look at what cosmic horror is right now in like modern storytelling. So let's pick apart like some examples that we know of relating either to Lovecraft's cosmic horror or just cosmic horror in general as to what it is. And I think one of the like more immediate ones is just Cthulhu himself. Like he like you had said earlier that his design was striking and like a very awesome character design. And
Yeah,
I agree with that fully. Like he looks amazing, or it looks amazing. Like for the like the squid head, the gargantuan size, the wings, all of it just
yeah,
looks like something both straight out of a person's nightmare and something just fucking cool. Like
yeah,
it is it really does encompass everything that you said, and like it's so terrifying that you just absolutely can't comprehend it, and yet like it's almost become synonymous with like Lovecraft's name,
yeah,
right? Like in modern depictions of Lovecraft stories, you get you get kind of allusions to it. And from my one of the more famous examples that I can tie into it was have you ever played the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim?
no, I have not.
So the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim has a lot of Lovecraftian influence, down to one of the more obvious ones is the monsters, which I can send a reference for in our chat. But yeah, so this is one of the ones that I'm more familiar with when it comes to modern influences. Like, it's a whole bunch of, like, almost the entire DLC has a lot of Lovecraftian influences, from like the way from the monsters themselves to the actual realm Apocrypha, which is the realm of the Daedric Prince Hermaeus Mora.
Yeah.
Everything looks oily. Everything looks like everything looks oily. It all has a lot of like squid influences, but at the same, and like tentacles, and it's all like creepy and disgusting and beyond comprehension, basically. But again, it looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking up pictures of it right now. It does. This is extremely Lovecraftian. I can't believe I've never played this.
It's a pretty good storyline too.
This would definitely be up my alley, I think.
Yeah. So another one that I'm more familiar with in terms of Lovecraftian, or like a modern Lovecraftian adaptation, was the actual game Call of Cthulhu. Which have you played that one?
I played it a little bit. I didn't play through the whole thing, but I played through a little bit, and then I looked up the ending because I honestly didn't like the game that much as a video game. But I think that game definitely did a good job of handling the sort of the visuals and the atmosphere of a Lovecraftian tale. And I was very much happy that they did not do what a lot of sort of Lovecraft adaptation video games did. I'm trying to remember the name of one game that does this, but anyway, it did not make Cthulhu a boss fight. That was something that I was very happy with because from what I understand, the game ends when the protagonist sees Cthulhu. It just cuts right to black, and that makes sense to me. That makes perfect sense to me. As soon as you see Cthulhu, that's game over. You're now an insane person. So
yeah. And then like another one that I think you might hate me for, but I'm gonna be talking about Marvel for a quick minute. If you're familiar with Doctor Strange and how there was a lot of, there was the dark cult that, that was, I guess, the main villains of Doctor Strange, and how they were trying to bring Dormammu over to the world. That's maybe one of the more recognizable things for me, because, like, given the context of a Marvel movie, they really couldn't lean too much into like the big disgusting kind of things. But as I was, from what I'm familiar with when it comes to Lovecraftian, or from cosmic horror, there are dark cults, which is, part of Doctor Strange. They were trying to bring in this, this being that couldn't be comprehended in Dormammu, and then, that's one of the more weird ones to me, because it's not, it's a Marvel movie, so it's not really completely cosmic horror, but there are a lot of influences from that.
Yeah, no, I definitely, when you put it that way, I would definitely agree with that. I'd say that there are some cosmic horror influences going on. There's a lot of we could talk about this later, but there's a lot of like modern sort of Lovecraftian tales, I would say, that I don't think would fall into the category of cosmic horror, but they definitely take influences from Lovecraft, and I think the Dark Dimension that's a decent candidate for being one of those.
How about you? Are there any like striking or like interesting modern stories that have either influences of cosmic horror or are directly cosmic horror that kind of like, that kind of stick with you?
Yeah, there's a lot. I'll try not to go through every single one that I can think of, because that would take too long. But But I think the first one that comes to mind, that's most recent, that was hugely popular, and I think as much as I didn't like it as a movie, I think it did a very good job of doing what a lot of Lovecraft film adaptations failed to do, which the movie I'm gonna start beating around the bush. The movie I'm talking about is Bird Box with Sandra Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think something that a lot of film adaptations of Lovecraftian horror struggle with strongly is the actual creatures themselves. When you're reading Lovecraft, there is very rarely a visual reference for the creatures. A lot of the art for Cthulhu is something that is like there's very little official art.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it leaves a lot of it to the reader's imagination, and the reader's imagination, when given as little sparse clues that Lovecraft gives the reader, it can conjure a lot of terrifying images in the reader's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I think a lot of film adaptations and video game adaptations and TV adaptations, especially TV adaptations with television's budget, I think what a lot of them have struggled with is capturing the creatures in a visual form.
Yeah.
And I think Bird Box, for all of its struggles as an actual movie, I think Bird Box did a very good job of sort of getting around this by never showing the creatures, but only showing the people seeing them
Mm-hmm.
in a very Lovecraftian way. Whenever the people in Bird Box see the creatures in question, it drives them immediately to kill themselves, which
Yeah.
could very much be seen as a form of madness. And the only people who are immune to these effects are people who are already extremely mad.
Or
Um,
blind.
yeah, or blind. Yeah. Like I said, that
Sorry,
movie has
sorry to take the wind out of you.
no. It's good to be reminded that movie has a kind of
That
a silly ending, but
yeah.
um, yeah, I think the one visual hint that there could be that of Lovecraftian horror is there's a character who has a bunch of sketches.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
looking that up right now.
and although in the scene it's a little ridiculous because he's supposed to be hiding out in their house and like infiltrating them, and then for no reason whatsoever except for the audience's benefit, he
Mm-hmm.
takes out all of his sketches, which I guess are supposed to represent the creatures, but they all look very different from one another.
Yeah.
Which again I thought was very smart, not showing a direct visual aid for what the creatures looked like and showing a bunch of different interpretations.
Yeah.
I thought that was very smart in terms of adapting cosmic horror.
Yeah, one of them is almost like Cthulhu like, or at least the one that I'm looking up. Like
Oh
it
yeah,
has like
there's
squid
like in the center
tendrils.
that is pretty much dead on Cthulhu. That was the one when I was watching the movie when I was like, oh, it's like it's like Lovecraft stuff. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It didn't save the movie for me, but it made the viewing experience a little cooler.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I think like if I were to ever watch it again, considering this context, it definitely would make it a more interesting watch. But like you said, I wouldn't really save the movie because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely weird. Uh, is there another story that kind of sticks out to you, or?
There's a couple others. I have four others. Do you want me to go through all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one I'm going to go through is there's a lot of his works that I think could be attributed to this. In a sense, I think he's like the modern Lovecraft, but Uzumaki by Junji Ito
Mm,
is another fantastic example of cosmic horror. Um, Essentially, if you've never read it, or if the people listening have never read it, Uzumaki is about a town that gets where the people in it become slowly more and more obsessed with spirals.
yeah.
Um,
My
and
God.
it starts off very like in a very minuscule way when one of the protagonist's fathers just becomes obsessed with spirals after seeing a snail inside of a wall, and he starts making everything spirals. He's a what do you call someone who makes pottery? There's a word for it. I can't remember what it is. Um, but
Uh,
the very
Words
first
escaped me too.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. The point is he makes like pottery, and all of his pottery stuff has like become spirals. And by the end of that little short story, he's found dead in his apartment after contorting his body into becoming a spiral itself.
Oh wow.
And then after that he's cremated, and his ashes in the sky form these horrible spiral shapes that seem to be consumed by clouds taking his face. And after that, things start to, pun not intended, spiral out of control as the rest of the town becomes consumed by spirals.
Oh my
And
god.
it's not clear whether or not the town was doomed to become obsessed with spirals one way or the other, but as far as cosmic horror goes, I think there's a definite connection between the his incident at the beginning and then the rest of the town sort of devolving into this spiral obsession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the images of this. Holy shit.
Oh yeah, the art in Uzumaki is fucking incredible. It's probably my favorite of Junji Ito's.
Mm-hmm. It's the one that I can like attribute with like most commonly with Junji Ito's. I think the other
Yeah.
one is the
Tomie.
yeah.
Yeah, the one image of the girl from Tomie with her face sort
Yeah.
of splitting off. A
Yeah.
lot of Junji Ito's work is not, I would say, is not very cosmic horror. It's more body horror and
Mm-hmm.
like traditional gothic horror. But Uzumaki, I'd say, is one that blends body horror and cosmic horror into this horrifying fucking combination.
Do you have one then that would be more closely related to cosmic horror then? Because you said
Oh
you
yeah,
had 4 stories, right?
yeah.
Okay.
This next one I'm going to talk about is probably the most direct and most clear cut Lovecraft adaptation. It's also one of my favorite Lovecraftian tales, and that's right. That's right. FromSoft fans, listen to this. You've been waiting for a long time. It's time. It's Bloodborne time. I'm talking about Bloodborne now. Bloodborne is probably the best adaptation, just in terms of strictly adapting what Lovecraft was about and what Lovecraftian horror is about.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah.
Not even just in terms of its visuals are incredible. It sort of circumvents what I was talking about with Birdbox by actually making the creatures in it as horrifying as Lovecraft's descriptions. The creatures that you see when you play through Bloodborne are actually terrifying
Oh
enough to
fuck.
like drive the player a little bit nuts while looking at them. Like
Yeah, I'm
I
looking up
can't
some screen caps right now. Fucking hell.
I cannot for the life of me see someone just looking at Ludwig and not going a little bit crazy. It's so fucked up in so many ways looking at it, but more than that, Bloodborne is really captures the idea of learning too much and gaining too much knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially how the game works is that you have this town, Yarnum, and for the regular townsfolk of Yarnum, this is nothing. There's nothing going on, because whenever they would observe a creature, if they were to observe one of these creatures, their mind would have no frame of reference from which to observe it, so their brain would just blank it out of existence. My fingers are a little greasy, you couldn't hear me snapping my fingers. That would have been a good effect, but it basically blanks it out of existence for them, so they can't see it. It's there, but they cannot observe it. And through Bloodborne, throughout Bloodborne, the more knowledge you gain and the more information that the hunter acquires, the more he's able to observe uh, the old ones and these cosmic monstrosities that have
Yeah.
essentially, yeah, that have taken over Yarnum through basically like a series of churches and scientists obsessing over alien blood and injecting themselves with alien blood.
Jesus. Yeah, these are uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah, and the more you go through the game, the more fucked up it gets, because the more layers of madness you undergo.
Yeah, clearly, because I never really I never really finished the game. I'm bad at From Software, guys. I respect the hell out of people who I respect the hell out of people who plays these games and gets genuine enjoyment out of them, because fuck, I'm bad. And don't tell me to get good in the comment section. I know.
Listen, I won't tell you to get good. What I will tell you, quick tangent, because I want to get back to Cosmic Horror stuff. But what I will tell you is that they're very rewarding. I'm not gonna say they aren't hard. A lot of people like to say they're not hard, bro. But they're very difficult. But I think they're good because they're difficult, because beating them is just extremely rewarding. Anyway.
Oh, I know the formula.
Oh yeah.
I know the formula. I've heard the formula a million times. It doesn't help me get any better.
No.
Anyway.
No, the back to Cosmic Horror. This sort of idea of knowledge even extends to the endings, the 3 endings, which there's been a lot of discussion about.
The what? Sorry.
The 3 endings for the game. Sorry, was that? Am I mumbling?
No, I thought we were talking about something else, but we're still on Bloodborne.
Oh no,
okay.
The Bloodborne's 3 endings. Okay. So traditionally, in a video game, the way that a multiple-ended game would work is that you have the first ending that you would normally get if you just do a normal playthrough, and would be traditionally considered "quote unquote" the worst ending.
Yeah.
And then the more hoops you have to jump through to get to what would be considered the best ending. Bloodborne kind of does this in a fucky way, in a very Lovecraftian way. So the first ending to the game, you go back to oh god, what's the leader of the hunters? I cannot remember his name right now. I look like a fake fan right now, but
you're talking. I haven't even finished the fucking thing.
And you basically says continue fighting or submit your life. And if you submit your life while you're in the hunter's dream, he executes you, and then you wake up and you're back in Yharnam, and the next day has begun. The second ending is if you choose to refuse him, then you have to go through this whole boss fight with him, and if you beat him, then the moon, then this creature comes down from the moon. The moon presence comes down, and you then find yourself in a wheelchair, and you're now the leader of the hunt. You're now the leader of the hunters, and you're cursed to essentially stay in the hunter's dream for the rest of your life, felicitating the hunt forever.
Yeah.
The third ending is even worse than this.
So lovely.
Don't oh my god yet. The third ending, is the one you have to jump through the most hoops to get. You should Google image search the third ending right now so that you can have an image reference for what I'm about to tell you.
All right.
So if you go through you go and learn as much as you can about the old blood and the ancient ones and all that stuff, what you'll essentially get are these
whoa, shit.
You have these umbilical cords that you have to eat if you consume the flesh of these ancient alien creatures.
Oh
then
my
at the end,
god,
you have the ability to fight the moon presence, and if you fight the moon presence, your character, you wake up as this small, horrible squid thing, and the doll picks you up, and from her dialogue, you have to pick up that that's you now. That you are now just this tiny. You're now this squid. You have basically become an alien, and the hunt will continue. No matter what ending you pick, the hunt will continue. There's no good ending.
Oh my god, bro! This character design looks amazing.
Oh, the doll, yeah.
No, everything, like the umbilical cord monsters. Jesus.
Yeah.
That looks sick. It is so terrifying.
Oh yeah, I know. It's fucked. What's even crazier though, the general consensus after this was that the first ending, where you were executed in the dream and then you wake up in Yharnam, this is considered the best ending because you're alive the hunt may continue, but you're alive. You're not cursed forever, and you have not turned into a squid baby.
Mm-hmm.
But if you pay attention to some of the dialogue that the guy Germain says, sorry that took me so long to remember, guys. That if you pay attention to the dialogue that he says, you realize that by choosing this path, when you wake up in Yarnum, you will forget this. You'll basically forget all of the knowledge that you've obtained. And so as for the character, well, that's just great. But as a player and as the audience, you will basically now know that this character is going to go through the rest of their life not knowing of these horrible machinations that you've spent the entire game fighting against exist all around you and can basically kill you whenever they want.
Oh my god, dude, that's fucked.
Yeah, Bloodborne is a beautifully fucked game, and it's kind of the perfect like narrative retelling of what Lovecraft was all about. A lot of people have tried and, in my opinion, kind of failed to get all of the elements to cohesively work together to have a great story,
Mm-hmm.
great visuals, the Lovecraftian horror, and cosmic dread. And Bloodborne kind of did it perfectly.
Yeah. So I think we can go one of two ways from here. So we can either talk more about some of the stories that you best think represents, cosmic horror, or we can dive into what makes cosmic horror.
There's a couple more I wanted to talk about, but they're pretty short. So
all right, go
that's
ahead
your
then.
call. Okay, I sort of jumped the gun. Bloodborne was going to be the last one, but I sort of jumped the gun on it. Another video game that I wanted to talk about was Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem,
I think I've heard of
which
that one.
I very briefly wanted to talk about because of how it handles. Not exactly. It doesn't have a lot of Lovecraftian visuals, but it definitely has this same idea, the same sort of Lovecraftian idea of madness as a result of peering into like the eye of the universe or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How this game does it and how a lot of Lovecraftian games do it is with a sanity meter. And Eternal Darkness, very famously, the more insane your character becomes as a result of seeing too much or taking damage too much, the game gets fucky.
Oh yeah, I've
And
heard about this game. Yeah.
yeah, so and this can range from visual stuff like your character will see your own hanging dead body or your own body bloody dead in a bathtub, to the game visually showing your volume bar going down or faking you out and saying you've just deleted your save game
Oh yeah,
just to
yeah.
fuck with you.
Yeah, I know about
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
it's great. I've got nothing more to say about it though. It's just great.
Yeah. So then what
And
would the final story be?
the final story is, I think, the most recent one. I don't know what time is, but I think it's the most recent one to come out. And it's not exactly cosmic horror, but it's definitely, I think, an adaptation of Lovecraft in a modern context, and that's The Shape of Water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. H Bomber guy talks more about this. I don't want to plagiarize everything he said, but I'll send you a link to his video later. But he talks about how The Shape of Water is sort of a play on these Lovecraftian elements of being considered an outsider and being this foreign element. But The Shape of Water sort of goes the opposite way and says this is a good thing. It's good to be an outsider. And I thought that was a super interesting. And I know that it was sort of a play on Lovecraft because Guillermo del Toro was talking about Lovecraft a lot. He tried to get a Mountains of Madness adaptation going a couple of years back. So
Mm-hmm.
I know he's a fan. I know there was some intention to this, and I definitely know it wasn't a mistake. That this is much like Innsmouth. It's about a fish person and about fucking a fish person.
Yeah. All right. So I think with the stories out of the way, let's talk about what makes cosmic horror. So we've already kind of touched on a few things, but really, what are some of the key defining things that makes a cosmic horror story?
I would say the defining formula for cosmic horror is take something that we know about, but that we don't know everything about, and make the everything make the stuff that we don't know about that thing scary.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, you got a cosmic horror. That's that is essentially that in the most common way that comes in either the ocean or space. If
Yeah.
there's something in the ocean that we don't know about and it's scary, that's cosmic horror. If there's something in space that we don't know about and it makes us feel small, that's cosmic horror.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. Like, would those two locations be like one of the key defining ones then? So like either underwater or outer space.
yeah, those were the two. Yeah, I'd say those are the two that like Lovecraft wrote about the most, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd say to this day those are the ones that are like the most important.
Yeah, and it
And the
makes
most like
sense. Like, it definitely does make sense. Like, underwater, there's all these numbers about like how unexplored the ocean is, and that's fucking terrifying.
yeah,
Like, granted, how like there's already so many people who are scared of going into or like being even near the ocean because as soon as you reach a certain point, there's no going. Like, there's all that emptiness behind you. Like, there's not even, you don't have to worry about like, the thing that worries me about the ocean personally is not the sharks, not um not finding some like crazy carnivore wanting to devour me. It's like, it's not, the fear isn't getting killed out there, it's the fear of drowning alone.
hmm I think this is another thing that H bomb said. So I have to say it so it doesn't sound like I'm plagiarizing him.
Mm-hmm.
But he in his video on Lovecraft he brings up the old joke about how if the paranoid conspiracy theory actually found the room where the government was like looking where was following him and had like a file on him, it would not make him any less afraid of it. It would not he would not be any more afraid of it because he would just feel validated in his fears. And I think one of the way that one would create cosmic horror is by creating something that doesn't validate fear but just gently tickles with the ideas
Mm-hmm.
with the fears that like people naturally have. Like if someone goes into a large body of water, what they're naturally afraid of in like a big ocean isn't necessarily that something is in that darkness of the water that they can't see all the way down to, but just the idea that there is an incomprehensible darkness below them and that anything could be down there and they wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
That's what fucks with people. And
Oh yeah, that
that's
definitely fucks with me.
yeah, it fucks with me too. I will never go swimming in the ocean ever in my life.
Yeah.
Um so I think if someone wants to if someone want I don't want to say I'm like an expert on writing cosmic horror. I've written a handful of cosmic horror short stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um I would say if someone wants to write cosmic horror, then they should
Don't just stick to space, you can stick with the ocean. That's a good setting.
don't don't just do like what Lovecraft did. Don't try to be Lovecraft. If you have a fear and it happens to coincide with Lovecraft, the by all means write about the ocean. But I would say don't just write about
Excuse
what
me.
you think will be Lovecraftian. Write about what fucks with you and what deeply messes with you. If it's the fear that we're one planet in billions in the universe, then make that fear. Then write about that and write about how horrifying that is and what horrific monstrosities might lay dormant beyond our reach and our understanding of the universe as these tiny little third dimensional beings. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you're uh or if you have a fear of the ocean, then yeah, write about the ocean. Um, I think it's cosmic horror is a lot about like understanding what fucks with you. I think that's the
Yeah.
secret.
I think, yeah, that's probably something to note down on that list. Like, I definitely do agree with you. Like, when you think of cosmic horror, you would typically associate it with space. And let's just talk about that actually. Like, it's even more terrifying thinking about, if there is life in the universe, if there's life outside of Earth, like, just how fucked would it look like?
Yeah.
Right.
And not just what it would look like, but whether or not a creature who maybe they're so far evolved from humanity that they have no more need for technology and they can just exist amidst space. And as a
Yeah.
result of them evolving to such the extent that they have the ideas of morality that we have, it wouldn't even register to them. They could destroy our entire planet on a whim if they wanted to, and we would be not only powerless to stop it, but we would be completely incapable of reasoning with it because it would be a creature beyond reason.
Yeah. And that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, thinking about it like that, like, you think of some of the most famous movie monsters, like the xenomorphs. And I know this is kind of going on a tangent, but like the xenomorphs,
oh yeah, the xenomorphs are a great example.
Yeah, like Predator, like those things, like, they don't comprehend like how we do, right? And trying to reason or trying to beg for your life, even, like, that just won't work. They see all they see is food.
Yeah, the xenomorphs are a great example. There's a show that I don't want to call cosmic horror because in a sense it's not really about aliens, but Parasite, with the anime with a Y, not the movie about class struggles with an I.
Which is that's also a great movie. Complete off
note. Parasite and Alien and like a lot of movies and stories that are about like alien creatures that eat people. Those are really, I don't know if they're necessarily inherently cosmic horror, but they definitely deal with a theme that is very cosmic horror, which is just the idea of a creature not comprehending the universe the same way we do, and how we would effectively deal with that. Because have you ever watched Parasite, by the way?
I don't think I have, no.
Yeah, Parasite's great. Parasite is essentially all about this race of parasitic organisms that came from a meteorite millions of years ago, and it sort of evolved to live on Earth, and they eat people. And the show's
sorry, I'll let you wrap up, or I'll let you continue.
Oh, okay. Essentially the idea in the series is whether or not like they should understand morality the same way we do, because when we eat a cow or something, or when we eat a chicken, like, we don't consider that an amoral act. And I don't think Parasite is by any means like a vegetarian propaganda show, but I think it is calling to question the idea that, like, if we don't view that as an amoral act, then we would have no right to judge a creature whose natural food source is humans on being amoral.
Yeah.
Because it would have no frame of reference to comprehend that. And the same goes for xenomorphs. Xenomorphs, we've sort of identified xenomorphs as like a horror icon, as like a slasher villain.
Yeah.
But what interests me about that is that most slashers are like serial killers. They're malicious murderers who are going out of their way to like do bad things. But for the xenomorphs, it's either food or the natural process of their reproduction requires death.
Yeah.
Which I think that's just I think that isn't, I don't know if, again, I don't think that Alien is a very cosmic horror story, but I think that idea is very cosmic horror, that idea of a creature whose existence essentially depends on like this on human death.
And see, I was wanting to tie into that with another franchise that I don't know why it popped into my head, because I can't make like the connection right now, but are you familiar with the Cloverfield movies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've only ever really seen the first movie, and the first movie, or I've seen Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane. Cloverfield, the entire, like, you can definitely see the monster, Like, you know what the monster looks like, and it's terrifying when you see it, but it's even more, like, for me, it was terrifying. It was absolutely, like, horrifying when it couldn't, because suddenly they installed, like, a decent enough sense of dread throughout the movie when the monster wasn't there.
Yeah.
And, like,
and then it could just pop up at any time. It's just this giant monster rolling about the city. You have no idea when it was going to come back.
Yeah. So I think that just popped into my head. Like, I can't really make the clearest connections right now, but yeah,
What's interesting is that I don't think the Cloverfield monster is very sort of Lovecraftian, but you should Google Cloverfield concept art, because the original sort of concept they had in mind for the Cloverfield monster, I'd say, is very Lovecraftian. It is.
Oh yeah, it's like it's a giant whale.
Yeah, sort of this giant whale creature with like fins coming out of the back of it, and those little leeches that it had in the movie are like, in the concept, they're like these human-sized crab creatures that just fall off its body.
Oh god.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's sick. But anyway,
I think Cloverfield's a good example of that too, though, because it doesn't say that any of this in the movie, but there's like a bunch of Cloverfield lore. Cloverfield's a weird movie that it's like a found footage movie with a ton of lore behind it, but a lot of the Cloverfield lore is like, this creature is like a baby, essentially, a species that has just crash landed on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of playing to that idea of there's this creature. It's not a monster that has come to kill all humans. It's basically a baby that landed here and is having a temper tantrum. But for this species, like the toddler's temper tantrum is a horrifying, destructive event. So
yeah, it's interesting, just like how, just how many, or just how influential cosmic horror has like become, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if we can't like closely associate it with it, like even if it's not directly classified as cosmic horror, movie, video game, TV show, book, anything, like there's still a lot of influence, especially in like this concept of the like fear of the unknown, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, like, for me at least, that's what I would personally put down if you were to write like your own cosmic horror story. Like, fear of the unknown is a huge pull towards anything. And like you had said earlier, like, write about what scares you and write about what you don't know. Like, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Fear of the unknown, discovery of the unknown, and then the negative consequences of that discovery. That's like the 3-step process to a Lovecraftian tale.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to repeat that? Actually, I'll note that down for like.
Yeah, sure. The fear of the unknown, the discovery of the unknown, and then the negative consequences of that discovery.
Cool. All right. So, I guess that's it, really. There's nothing else really I want to talk about. I mean, it's such a thing, like, for a subject that like I personally hadn't really known about. Like, it's interesting getting this kind of insight and looking into it a little bit more. And granted, like, I'm still scared of fucking almost everything, so like, I don't think I'm gonna be writing my own cosmic horror stories anytime soon. But at least I know more about it, right? And I have more appreciation of it, right? I don't have an appreciation for racism. So, maybe we won't dip into Lovecraft sometime soon, but like...
Yeah. If Lovecraftian horror is the fear of the unknown, then the thing that Lovecraft did not know about was other races.
Yeah. So, I guess with all that being said, everyone, thanks for listening in. For plugging, you can find us all on the InkGuild at the InkGuild on Twitter and Instagram. We have 2 different channels now. So we have the main channel at youtube.com/the InkGuild, which we don't have yet. So just search up the InkGuild on YouTube. And as well, we also have the InkGuild streams, where we upload our stream archives from Twitch, which, if you want to catch live, that'll be twitch.tv/the InkGuild _Twitch. You can find Gabe and I respectively in the description of our videos. So I am at Daniel Cordero on Instagram and Twitter, and Gabe is at Pepsi Chamber on Instagram. And I think as a final note, because I want to push this recording time to an hour, how about you and I build a cosmic horror creature?
Okay.
Yeah. So let's spend some time. I'll let you start. So let's spend some time just creating something terrifying.
All right. What are we thinking?
Well, since we are dipping into our greatest fears, or since it's fear of the unknown, we can start with the setting.
All right.
So,
All right. Let's do the ocean. The ocean's a classic.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. So, let's say that we find our protagonist out in the middle of the Pacific, and
Okay.
let's say that they dip their, let's say that they're slowly starting to drown, and then as soon as they've dipped under the surface, they see something. It's not a shark. It's not a giant fish. It's not anything remotely close to things beyond or things within our comprehension. It gets a split second of it. What does he see? Yeah, what do they see? Or they get, let's say they get a full minute.
A full minute.
Yeah, which I know
That's psych ward territory, baby.
Yeah. It's not. I know a full minute is probably not. That probably doesn't make sense, but they're gonna die anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What does this creature look like?
If they're deep in the water, they would probably. All right, so they're deep in the depths of darkness. They might not get like a perfect glimpse of what they might be looking at,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's hard coming up with a creature like on the spot. I've designed 3 horror monsters, and they all took me like a good day to come up with.
Okay, well then let's build it like piece by piece. So like, first of all, is it huge?
It would have to be impossibly large. Is the word that Lovecraft loves to use. Impossibly large.
All right. Is it humanoid? So it has a head, torso, arms, legs.
It's probably maybe it's like something that we could identify as a human at first, but not something that like we would ever characterize as humanoid.
All right.
I'm gonna look up some visual references. I'm gonna see if I can.
Yeah, I will too. Does it have how many eyes does it have? Because I know that that's a thing with a lot of Lovecraftian monsters. They tend to have like a bunch of eyes, or like a bunch of like everything. So like a bunch of mouths, a bunch of eyes, a bunch of like a bunch of teeth.
All right, I'm gonna think. So it's got 2 eyes, and it's sort of like maybe like a fish-like head, sort of large and oblong in shape.
Mm-hmm. I want to add like a bunch of really, really sharp teeth.
Yes, teeth that protrude like out of its mouth in like sort of a catching sort of shape, like it's aiming its teeth almost at this drowning man.
Ooh, yeah.
Like an anglerfish teeth. Its teeth sort of shut out of its face.
Ooh, speaking of anglerfish, I want to add in a lot of bioluminescent light to it.
Yeah, beautiful.
So like if it's swimming by, this person is comprehending a bunch of lights.
That might be the first thing he sees. Yeah. That'll be the first that he sees these sort of light chasings at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, I love it.
And Thor sees these light tracings, and then he sees some larger lights,
Mm.
and then he sees like these, and then you might see like these white shapes that are reflecting the light. And as he delves further down into the ocean, he starts to realize that the shapes that are reflecting these light that he's going towards are a massive pair of protruding teeth.
Oh my god!
Jutting out at him.
Yeah.
As he gets closer, the teeth might reflect onto the creature's body. He gets a view of its bright but black skin as this impossibly large creature starts approaching him, and he realizes he's not even sinking anymore. This creature's coming towards him. It's coming at him. He's gone so far into the ocean now, he can't see the surface anymore. He can't see his boat anymore.
Yeah. We need to engage more of the senses. So, like, let's say, I know this would be I've never really tested this, but would he be smelling anything under the surface?
He could be. I don't know if you could smell anything, but he might be hearing something. This is sort of dipping into something one of my stories I've already written, but he could be hearing
what's something
the sound the creature is making.
Yeah.
A horrible, ear-piercing sound that renders him completely motionless, as if it's attacking the nervous system, as if the sound is just attacking his nervous system from the ear down.
Oh, so something kind of like a dog whistle.
Yeah, it's paralyzing his body. He can't swim up. He can't swim away, as he's just forced to slowly sink towards this creature with its slowly opening jaws. As it doesn't have an anglerfish bulb to attract creatures, but it just paralyzes them with its sound as they're forced to drown and sink towards its mouth.
Oh, this is actually kind of fucking terrifying. Okay, so so we can kind of like this, so we kind of have some kind of glimpse of it. So I think as our protagonist is approaching, or like is slowly being stalked by this creature, what other details should we include? So like the temperature of the water, does it start like heating up, or does it start freezing? Because I think that could be a really crucial detail.
I think the water should be freezing cold at first, and then as he gets closer to it, it starts to become a little bit warmer and a little bit warmer, and he can't quite tell what the warmth is. But then as he gets to this as he slowly sinks, the water becomes warmer and warmer to the point where it feels like it's boiling. The water is boiling hot. What he's feeling is this creature is so massive, so gargantuan, that its body heat is boiling the water around it.
Yeah.
And in essence, it cooks its food before it eats it with its own presence.
Oh, that's badass.
Yeah.
That's sick,
Thanks.
dude. I think that's it.
All right.
I kind of don't want to. I mean, unless there's any other details that you want to add into it, because I've never built a horror monster before.
I think a fish monster that cooks its prey, that attracts its prey towards it with its lights, paralyzes it with its screams, and then cooks it before it eats it with its own body heat. That's pretty good.
That's pretty badass, yeah.
I might actually use that.
I hope you do. It sounds sweet. It sounds terrifying. All right, so I guess with that out of the way, and with all of this being said,
on that horrifying note,
yeah, with that horrifying note, as Gabe said, thanks for listening, everyone. Sleep well tonight.